Good afternoon, Zoe Church. Let's stand and worship. There's joy in this house. We worship the God who was. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors. He parted the raging sea. My God, He holds the victory. Yeah. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. Shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Oh, we shout out your praise. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. 'Cause He hung upon that cross, then He rose up from that grave. My God. Now we're royalty. We were the prisoners. Now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. Come on, let's sing. We were the prisoners. Now we're royalty. We were the prisoners. Now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Sing it.
There's joy in the house of the Lord today,
And we won't be quiet. Oh,
we shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the
there's joy
Lord.
in this
Our
house.
God is surely in this place, and we won't be quiet.
Oh, we shout out your praise.
There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the
Lord today.
and we won't be quiet.
We shout out your praise.
There's joy in the house of the Lord.
Our God is surely
And we won't be
be quiet. We shout out your praise. We shout out your praise. There is joy in this house. There is joy in this house today. We shout out your praise. We shout out your praise. We're creation, suddenly I'll take you there. With 1,000 tongues to lift one cry. From north to south and east to west, we'll hear Christ be magnified. With the whole earth. With the whole earth echoing His eminence, His name would burst from sea and sky. From rivers to the mountain tops, we'll hear Christ be magnified. Let's magnify Him together. Oh, Christ be magnified. Just let His praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified. The altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Yeah. When every creature finds its inmost melody, and every human heart its native cry, then in one enraptured hymn of praise, we sing Christ be magnified. Oh, Christ be magnified.
'cause you're there too. I won't be formed by feelings. I hold fast to what is true. And if the cross brings transformation, you can hang me there with you. 'Cause death is just a doorway into resurrection life. If I join you in the suffering, then I'll join you when you rise. And when you return in glory with all the angels and the saints, my heart will still be singing, my soul will be the same. Oh, Christ be magnified, let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified. Just let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me.
Can't go back to the beginning. Can't control what tomorrow will bring. But I know here in the middle is the place where you promised to be. Not enough unless you come. Would you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Would you meet me here again? As I walk down through the valley, let your love rise above every fear. Like the sun shaping the shadows, and in my weakness your glory appears. I'm not enough unless you come. Would you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Would you meet me here again? I'm not enough unless you come. Would you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want come, would you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Would you meet me here again?
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes, to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. The morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, all the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored. And the Church of Christ was born, then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of old shall not kneel, shall not faint. By His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free. With the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the Kings of Kings.
God, you are all that we just declared. King of kings, Lord of lords. There is no one above you. And God, we praise you for your victory. We praise you for what you did for us on the cross and what you continue to do. And the more that we embrace who you are, the more we spend time in your presence. We thank you that you are the living water that never runs dry, that never leaves us thirsty again. And I pray that as Dora comes up and she gives the message, that our hearts will be softened as we listen to what you have to say to us today, God. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. You may be seated.
Thank you. Oh, this is going to be different. all of that said, let's begin. So, when I was in high school, my family actually took a trip to Europe, and we spent, I think it was literally just one day in Madrid. And when we were there, we actually got to watch a real bullfight. So, I don't know if you actually know the purpose of a bullfight. It's not really all as fun as we think it is. They're actually trying to kill the bull. That's the point. They're trying to fight to the death, and they kill the bull. And so there were two matadors that actually went up, and the first one, he kept fighting the bull, and eventually he killed the bull, and it was kind of exciting. It was kind of fun, and then they're really they're big showmen about it, and they make it fun for everybody. But the second matador went up to the center of the ring, and he actually, he started fighting the bull, and every time the bull would would run at him, he would stab the bull, and then he would turn around to the crowd, and he'd wave his cape, and he would, put on a big show. And one time when he was not looking at the bull ran at him and actually stabbed him right in the stomach. It was pretty gruesome. My family were all watching it, and we were having fun, and then all of a sudden we were like, whoa. Not so fun anymore. And so the bull actually just started, the matador was stuck on the horn of the bull, and the bull was just raging and making it worse. And he was trying to kill the matador. And eventually, medics came out, ran and rushed the matador out, and they took him off. And they were trying to calm the bull down, and nothing they were doing was calming the bull down. And in that moment, I actually understood the phrase, when somebody sees red. It's because when a bull is charging at, the muleta, which is the cape that the matador is swinging, it's like all they can see is that. All they can see is their target. They want to kill. They're either going to kill or be killed. So scientists have proven since then that, they're not actually charging at the color red. They're charging at the cape because they're being mocked. But the phrase has stuck around, and I like it because I think it actually accurately depicts how some of us act when we're angry. We only see one thing. We're focused on just our anger. And, it's just something that leads us to the point of destruction. So have you ever been so angry that you simply couldn't control yourself? That a word slipped out of your mouth or your body reacted without even realizing it. All of a sudden a punch was thrown or an F-bomb was dropped and you had no idea that you were capable of such things. For me, usually it's that I can't think clearly. My heart starts racing, my mind starts racing, tears start streaming down my face, my body tenses up. And I'll be honest with you, anger is one of the things I've struggled with the most in my life. I struggled with it till today. Just this morning, I felt really angry, and I reacted in a way that I shouldn't have. And I've earned a reputation as someone who has a short fuse, and while God has really brought a lot of growth and healing in my life in this area, I still find my temper hard to control sometimes. So today's message is called Seeing Red, and we're going to be looking at a story about a man whose anger became the cause of his downfall and ultimately his death. Let's turn together to 1 Samuel 18, 6-16. And it says this: As they were coming home, when David returned from striking down the Philistine, the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul, with tambourines, with songs of joy, and with musical instruments. And the women sang to one another as they celebrated, Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. And Saul was very angry, and this saying displeased him. And he said, They have ascribed to David tens of thousands, and they've only ascribed to me thousands. And what more can he have but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day on. And the next day, a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul. And he raved within his house while David was playing the lyre. And he did day by day. And Saul had his spear in his hand. Now, this was normal, like a king would have his spear. It was just, something that they did because they were powerful, and it was a symbol of their power. So he had his spear in his hand, and Saul hurled his spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. But David evaded him twice. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David had success in all his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fearful awe of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, for he went out and came in before him. So for those of you who were here for our series called The Age of Kings, you are probably familiar with Saul and David. They were the first and second kings of Israel. I just want to give you guys a little recap of the story so you know kind of what's happening here in the passage. After the nation of Israel demanded that Samuel give them a king, the prophet Samuel anointed Saul to be their first king. And so everything seemed to be going well until Israel was commanded to fight this battle against a nation called Amalek. And God commanded them that when you go and you fight this battle, you leave nothing behind. You kill everybody, you destroy everything, kill all of their livestock, leave nothing behind, and take nothing for you. And so Israel goes into battle, they win, they kill everyone, but Saul spares the life of their king. And some of the soldiers actually choose to keep some of their livestock. And this disobedience displeases God, and so he rejects Saul, and he says, you know what, I'm going to appoint another king. And so he anoints David to be the next king of Israel. And when God removes his spirit from Saul, an evil spirit actually begins to torment him. And so he looks for someone who will come and play music for him. So he looks for someone to play the lyre, which is basically a harp. And his servants recommend David. They say, we've seen him play. He's a fantastic player. Bring him in, and he'll comfort you when he plays music. And it says in 1 Samuel 16:21 that David came to Saul and entered his service, and Saul loved him greatly, and he became his armor bearer. So when you see that, he loved David greatly, but now he wants to kill David. Something happening here, and we're going to get to how that happens. It's during this time that the infamous story of David and Goliath occurs. So Goliath, the Philistine giant, threatens Israel. He mocks God, And David becomes angry. He's like, why is nobody fighting him? Why are we letting him say these things about our God? And so little young shepherd boy David goes and he fights Goliath and he defeats him. And it's because of this that Israel can win the battle and they become victorious. And that's kind of the part we're at right now. They've come back from battle. They've defeated the Philistines. But David has defeated Goliath, and he's actually done so well in battle that they're crediting him with killing tens of thousands, while Saul, just thousands. I mean, it's still a lot of people, and they're exaggerating it, but at the same time, like Saul kind of feels bad about this. He's angry that they're making David out to be better than he is. And if you don't know the rest of the story, it's kind of all downhill for Saul from this point. He tries to trick David and get him killed, so he says, hey, I will let you marry my beautiful daughter if you go into battle and fight for me. And David's like, okay, great. And Saul thinks this is going to get David killed, but instead, David is victorious. And he goes in and out of battle, and he's constantly winning. And so people love David more. And the more that they love him, the more Saul grows angry, and he grows to hate him. Eventually, Saul actually takes his army, and he decides to hunt David down and kill him. And David escapes and he hides with the Philistines, the same people that he just defeated. He goes and he hides with them because it was safer for him to be there. And while he's there, he starts, fighting alongside the Philistines. So the Philistine king says, you know what? I'm going to attack Israel. I have their hero right here, the one who beat us, a while back. He's here with us and he's going to fight with us. So this is an opportune time for us to fight and destroy them. And so they go and they fight and they go into battle. And it's during this battle that Saul's sons are all killed, and Saul realizes that he is going to be killed himself, so he decides to take his own life. It's a pretty tragic story, actually. A man once chosen to lead a strong and powerful nation, he now loses everything, and eventually his own life due to his uncontrollable anger. How does that happen? How does anger lead to complete and total destruction? Well, I want to share with you 3 things about anger that I see in this passage that I think we need to learn from. The first thing is that anger is usually a secondary emotion. If you actually look at, people when they're angry, you talk to them, you'll find that anger is generally just a surface level emotion. It's not actually what's going on inside. They have something else that they're feeling. So if we look at the story, you see Saul expressed his emotions through anger, but he was really feeling jealousy and fear towards David. Think about why he got angry in the first place. He got angry because the women were singing and chanting, and they were claiming that David defeated tens of thousands. So he was feeling jealous, and he was feeling fearful because he thought, you know what? David could actually be king. He could take the kingdom from me. Sometimes when we talk to people, they have a hard time identifying what they're feeling. You talk to someone who's angry, they often feel angry because, they feel betrayed, or they feel angry because they feel hurt, or they feel angry because they feel offended or embarrassed or defeated or ashamed or overlooked or belittled, etc., etc. They feel angry because of something else that led to that anger. And we're blinded by our anger, so it's hard to determine what it is that's actually causing us to feel it in the first place. And the reason for that is because anger is a safe emotion. It's safe because it actually puts us in a position of power. When we're angry, we're intimidating to other people. But when, we're hurt or we're scared, we're vulnerable. We look weak. We appear to others as weak and vulnerable and easy to, target. And so a lot of us prefer anger over anything else. You see, when Saul disobeyed God, Samuel the prophet told him, "The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you this day, and he's given it to a neighbor of yours who is better than you." So Saul knew that the kingdom was going to be taken away from him. He knew that someone else was going to have it, but he didn't know who it was. And at this point, when he hears everybody praising David, he suddenly realizes, maybe it's going to be David. Maybe David is going to be the one who takes over. And this prophecy comes to mind, and he gets nervous, and he gets jealous, and he gets fearful, and he's afraid of losing his position and his power. And so because of that, we see that God's Spirit departs from him, and his anger overtakes him because of another spirit that's tormenting him. And now we see his whole life kind of go downhill. Instead of putting himself in what he deemed to be a vulnerable position, instead of talking to Samuel about, hey, that prophecy you told me, like, what's going on with that? Instead of talking to David and saying, hey, are you after my throne? He just goes, you know what? I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him and get rid of him, and then I don't have to worry about it. He hides behind his anger. The second thing that I think is important for us to think about is that anger is often founded in pride. One of the problems with anger is that we can actually justify it often. We justify our anger. We feel entitled to our anger. We feel like, I have a right to this anger. I often hear things from people like, I don't deserve to be treated like this. I deserve better. Or how dare they do blank to me? Or, that person had the audacity to do whatever. A lot of language that really shows entitlement and pride and just feeling like I am justified in this anger. In many of these instances, we feel disrespected because we believe we deserve a certain level of treatment from others, a certain type of treatment, and someone has fallen short. They treated us as less than we desire or deserve to be treated. So, we feel like our ego has kind of taken a hit. And we look at King Saul again. Why was Saul so afraid of David? Why was he so jealous? Because he felt he was entitled to his position. He liked being held in high esteem. He liked the praise and the power that he had. And now, for the first time, he's realizing that someone else could take that power. Someone else could take that high position that he has. His insecurities led him to being angry and acting out against David. Now, I'm just going to say this super quick because it's a little off topic, but I mentioned that Saul was insecure. And I think a lot of us actually confuse insecurity with humility. We think that because someone thinks badly about themselves, that means they're humble, but that's actually not the case. Just because you think poorly about yourself doesn't mean that you're humble. It actually means that you are still prideful. You care what other people think of you. You're worried about how others are going to perceive you. It's still an area of pride. It's just a different side to pride. So I just want to mention that in case anyone is confused about, he had insecurity, so how is he prideful? So as I was saying, Saul didn't want to give up his position, even though he knew that God was the one who anointed him, and he had the right to anoint anyone else that he deemed fit to be king. It was God who put Saul in that position in the first place, and God who selected David and anointed him after that. But Saul's pride didn't allow him to recognize this. As believers, we need to remember that we're called to live humbly and not act in prideful ways. Instead of demanding to be treated a certain way and reacting with anger when these expectations aren't met, we should be loving to others and treating them the way we desire to be treated, holding others in high esteem. Looking at Jesus, who acted in utmost humility, who took the form of a lowly servant just because he was acting out in love and he was obedient to the Father. And if Jesus, who is God, was willing to take the most humble form in order to love and serve others, how can we walk around demanding to be treated a certain way and getting angry and justifying that anger? Third of all, anger has the ability to consume us. I gave the example earlier of a bull focusing only on the muleta and trying to kill the matador that's waving it at him, right? And every other person who ran out there to try to calm the bull down was of no consequence. They were just insignificant. The bull didn't even look at them. He was focused on one thing. He wanted to kill the matador. And when I read this story of Saul and David, I can't help but kind of see Saul as a reflection of that angry bull. It actually says in 1 Samuel 18:10 that Saul was raving in his house. In other words, Saul was in some sort of spiritual trance or state of mind, and he was going mad. And as a result of this raving, Saul actually hurls his spear at David twice. Can you imagine going to work and then all of a sudden your boss just throws a knife at your head? No explanation, just kind of aims for you, and you're like, oh, where'd that come from? Yeah, that's kind of exactly what happened to David. He went to work that day and his boss threw a spear at him, not once, but twice. It's just strange and inappropriate behavior for Saul, and yet he does it anyways because he can't control himself. He can't control his anger. His body just reacts. And this is only the beginning of Saul's anger. We see that his anger causes David to run away and leave his family and leave his nation behind, to live amongst his enemies. His anger leads to a series of events that eventually ends with Saul and his children dying. Saul gets to a point where he's just like the bull. It's either kill or be killed. His goal is destruction. And unfortunately for him, he ends up losing in the end. So many of us allow our anger to take root in our hearts and grow within us until it's a part of who we are. We become characterized by anger. You know, the difference is that we just sometimes don't recognize it. Because instead of being called angry people, we're called sarcastic or short-fused or impatient or oversensitive. But anger has taken root in our lives, and we walk around wishing evil upon others. That poison is eating away at us, and we don't know how to stop it from killing us. So, if anger is so harmful to us and to those around us, how do we handle it? Well, Ephesians 4 tells us to be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger and give no opportunity to the devil. But being angry without sinning is so much easier said than done. In fact, some of you sitting here listening to me or listening to me online are getting angry with me for saying these things. Some of you don't like that I'm calling you out on what you're feeling, that I'm naming things that you've been hiding away inside of you for so long. And I'm not trying to upset any of you. I'm right there in the same boat. When I say I got angry just this morning, I got angry just this morning. I want us all to find a way that honors God and doesn't hurt us or others around us. So the first thing that you can do is actually find a physical way to release some of that built up anger. Personally, when I'm angry, my heart rate speeds up and I need to actually slow it down. So I do a lot of breathing exercises. I also talk to my husband. That's the number one person I go to. I'm like, hey, I need to talk. I need to calm down. I need somebody to just listen to me right now. I find a way to actually just release some of that anger so that I calm down, because I can't do any of the processing work, the hard work, until my heart rate slows down. For some of you, it might mean going for a run or a workout, or it might even mean just doing a hobby or something. Take your mind off of it for a little while. And once you've dealt with the physical response, you can move on to the next thing. The second thing we have to do is actually identify the emotions that are behind the anger. I told you anger is not the primary emotion. Anger is a secondary emotion. So what's causing you to feel this way? So take time to actually reflect on the things that you feel. What was the exact moment that I started to feel angry? What was happening? What caused me to feel angry? Sometimes a lot of those things are actually mixed in with our history and things from our past. So identifying even, when was another time that I felt this way? Are those instances similar? Am I struggling with the same feelings? Am I, maybe projecting that previous history onto my current experience? I'm going to give you guys an example. So, for example, your partner leaves the house. They don't tell you where they're going. You wake up and you find them gone. When they finally come home, you're angry. And you yell at them, next time, you have to tell me where you're going. It's so rude to leave without telling me where you're going. You live in the same house as me. You have to inform me. Now, when you peel back the layers, you might find that maybe you were actually just afraid that your partner was going to leave and not come back. Maybe it's similar to an experience you had as a child where a parent left and didn't come back. Or maybe a friend left and they didn't come back. And even though you know your partner loves you and wouldn't do that, until you work through all of those layers, you won't actually be able to resolve your feelings. They're being masked by your anger. For some of you, you're not used to reflecting like this, and I get it. It's not an easy thing. So I recommend even starting with a journal and writing down, this is where I felt this big thing. This is where I felt this big emotion. And this is what happened that caused me to feel it. And just start from there. Take your time to reflect on it even later if you can't do it in the moment. The third thing we need to do is actually try to resolve the situation. So in some cases, that means having a conversation. It's a pretty straightforward thing. This person made you angry. You go talk to them and say, hey, when you did this, it upset me for these reasons. Other times, it might be a little bit more complicated. Maybe it's a circumstance that's just, you can't change it. You can't do anything about it. And it makes you angry. It hurts. It sucks. And so we have to learn to accept that circumstance and accept the fact that it won't change. Other times it might mean that we need to dispel some lies that we've believed and spoken and speak some truth to ourselves. You know, same example, your partner has left. So in that example, you would have to tell your partner, hey, next time, it would be nice if you left me a note because this is how I felt. I felt like maybe you were leaving me, maybe you were abandoning me. It would be nice to know that this is where you're going, this is when you're coming back. But you also need to dispel those lies. Have a conversation with yourself and say, hey, God loves me. I'm valuable to him. And he's given me people in my life who also see value in me. And they're not going to abandon me. And finally, we need to be praying that God would take the feelings of anger and other feelings, hurt, shame, fear, etc., away and replace them with peace and joy from his Spirit. Praying that he would heal our hearts. And now I say finally, not because this is the last thing you should do. No, this is something you should be doing throughout the whole process. But I say finally because sometimes after you work through the whole process, the anger still lingers. It's still there. And so it's still something you have to come back to and say, hey, God, work on this area in my life. Release that anger in my life. We need to be able to feel free of our anger, and the only way to accomplish this is through divine healing. So, just to close, I want to speak to some of you who've been harboring anger for years. And you've tried everything you can to work through it. It still eats away at you. Right now, I'm going to close by praying for all of us. But specifically, those of you who know that you've been struggling with that anger and it's been built up for a while, I want you to really take a chance to focus in on what I'm saying. Remove all distractions from your mind. And if you need to close your eyes, Just pay attention to my voice as I pray. Father God, I come to you today as someone who also struggles with anger and who's had, years of baggage that you've already brought peace and joy and replaced that baggage, but I still struggle with anger, and I still struggle with having that short fuse. God, I pray that those of us here who may not even recognize that we're struggling with these things, I pray that you would help us identify that right now. God, I pray that you would kind of shine a light in some of those areas, whether it's family that we're angry at, or friends, whether we're angry at just circumstance and life has felt hard. God, I pray that you would, if we could picture our lives as a big drawing, as a big painting, that you would just kind of shine a light on that spot where the anger is sitting. And I pray, God, now that we could see you lifting those weights one by one off of our shoulders. God, that we would physically feel ourselves relax and physically feel that weight being lifted off. And like we're not carrying anything anymore. God, I pray that you would help us identify all of the things in our lives that we've been holding on to, that have been hindering us from moving forward and living in your will, from experiencing your joy and your peace. And I pray that they would be replaced with that joy and peace today. God, I pray for walls to be broken and chains to be broken today. That everything that is hindering us from running to you would just kind of be moved and pushed aside. And we would see a clear path before us to your cross. Jesus, for everyone here or online who's still holding on to anger even right now, even as we're praying, I pray that you would speak to them words of comfort. Remind them that you love them. Remind them that you have good things in store for them. Remind them that their anger and their hurt and their pain can all be given to you, and that you will carry the burden and you will carry all of those heavy things, and that you will walk alongside them. And Jesus, I pray that as this day goes by and as this week goes by, because I know that this is how the devil works, that he's going to come and he's going to attack and he's going to bring about more things to anger us. Even today, even as we walk out the doors today. God, I pray that we would hold on to the things that you've spoken to us today, and that we would be able to work through them in a healthy way, so that we are not on the path to destruction, but that we are on the path to life. In your holy name I pray. Amen. All right, thank you guys so much for being here. Have a great week, and we will see you next week at our community outreach event.